Um, so thank you for joining, those of you who have. For anyone who doesn't know me already, my name's Lauren and I'm the exhibitions manager at Humber Street Gallery, which means I have the lovely job of working with lots of artists to produce and commission exhibitions like the one that we'll be exploring this evening. I'm really excited to introduce you to Hetain Patel. Hetain is a visual artist and performance maker whose practice is concerned with connecting marginalized identities to the mainstream. And that's exactly what he explores in his current exhibition, Bars House, which opened last month at Humber Street Gallery. The exhibition is a mixture of work dating back to 2015 and some newly commissioned paintings. Really excited to have this event, which will give Hetain the opportunity to expand on those works in detail and also speak to his practice a little bit more broadly. Shortly, I'm going to hand over to Hetain to give a short presentation about his work, and then we'll come back for some questions at the end. So if you have questions whilst we're going along, remember them or jot them down in the chat and we can come back to them. And also the last little bit of housekeeping is just to say that we are recording tonight's event. So if you want to go under the radar, just turn your camera off. And when it comes to questions, don't feel like you need to unmic, just pop them in the chat and then we can pick them up there. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Hetain.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. It's a shame if there's just a few of us. We could have just sat around a coffee table and had a cup of tea, couldn't we? That would have been nice. Sorry, I can't be up there in person now, but you know, that's how things are. See, someone's got their cuppa. That's good thinking. But so what I thought I'd do, I was going to talk for about half an hour. And then I think we'll see if anyone's got any questions. We can talk a bit more about those things, so can talk about things that you might be interested in. I've brought some visuals with me. I'm going to share my screen in a minute. I thought what I do is talk a bit about the show and show you some images that you wouldn't really get to see, really, which are a bit of background or how some of the works were made. It's a nice opportunity for me to kind of remember some of that as well, because as an artist you tend to sometimes you're just making things and showing them and then moving on to the next, or you've half moved on to the next before you've even finished making one thing. And you know, it's usually only just in talks that you get to kind of revisit some of these things and think about them. Okie doke. Let me just share my screen. I do this and this. Got it? Great. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to say is, you know, I guess I'll start with the Jump first, the film, which hopefully you've had a chance to see. Partly because it's the main work which hangs a lot of the other work together. One of the things that is very different about this show at Humber Street Gallery is the presentation of the Jump. So when I made the work and kind of conceived of it, it was always intended to be shown, never the two films side by side, that you would have a screen and as you can see in the image, that one of the films is shown on one side and you can sort of see people around the back end of it watching the other film. And one of the reasons is I wanted to kind of feel like it was two different angles on the same jump. So you've got the same slow motion jump, but you're viewing it from one side or the other side, and the two sort of jump, you know, at the same time. And one side being this very, as you see in the image, this very Hollywood sort of image, and then another being sort of the reveal of it being in the house. And so you get the experience of both, but they've got the same soundtrack, if you like. And so what I do sometimes after I've made a work is, you know, as I get show it more and more, I could sometimes play around with how it's exhibited, sort of try something, so, see how it makes me feel, or see how an audience responds to it. And so this was an opportunity to sort of to do that, and to have them shown sort of side by side in a sense. So yeah, if you at the end, if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've seen the original version or anything like that, let me know what you think. And then let's see. Oops. So this image here is a photographic work, which was sort of just predated the film, probably by a couple of months or so. So when I first went to see my gran at that house with the Spider-Man costume, I wanted to take these portraits with her, and obviously I was a bit nervous. It's a bit of a weird thing to do, isn't it? Just turn up at your gran's with a Spider-Man costume and want to take some pictures. But funnily enough, it felt like the most normal thing in the world. She's there alone. I turn up with a friend of mine who's white British, who's helped me with the photography, and that's strange enough in itself, because it's usually just the family in the house, and and so I asked her whether she'd mind me was taking this picture together, and she said she was fine with it, and so I went and got changed and came in with the Spider-Man costume, and she kind of just acted as though it was just any old, I just walked in a suit or something. She just went straight into talking about the making of it. So, one of the things she did all of her working life in the UK was work as a seamstress. And so she's had an industrial sewing machine at home. And so we were talking a lot about making of garments. And most of the day was taking photographs and just having a chat, really. When she was regaling the story to my family at a later date, she said that I came round with this English guy, and this English guy spoke perfect Gujarati, and we all had a nice chat together. I mean, he didn't speak a word, but it's funny, isn't it, how you remember things, or you remember memory works as a vibe in sometimes. So when we shot the film, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never made a film like this before, and where all the films that I made before were very much sort of DIY with this sort of camera on a tripod pointed at myself, just this basic camcorder. And so this is the first time that I was going to need specialist equipment and to work with a crew and to do it in a particular way. So I just put some feelers out on Facebook, I think, and I met this guy in Manchester who was a cinematographer, and he was very kind enough to sit down with me and say, like, you're going to need this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, I've got virtually no money to do this project. And so he was really good at helping me figure out how to do it on as cheap a budget as we could, and brought only the relevant people in, and people who did us a deal, and people who was, it was sort of made on a shoestring. And we had to shoot it in a day. So what we did is I found this sports hall just down the road from my grand's house, which we hired for a couple of hours. So we went there in the morning and did this super quick. We just set up a load of this stuff in this sports hall. Behind me, you'll see this sort of black cloth being put up to create the black background in the correct spot for where I'd be jumping. And then we had a smoke machine, and we just had to try it over a number of shots. And I was sort of jumping off these camera boxes, and they were sort of capturing it. And I do one jump, come back and look at the camera, see what's been recorded, and see how I wanted to change the shape of the jump, or whatever it might be, or that sort of thing. You can see here a couple of the camera guys and the little screen there that they're recording on. And then the second half of the day was at my grandma's house, just down the road. This is all in Bolton. As you can see, there's not a lot of room to do stuff, as there isn't in most people's living rooms. And there's a lot going on. I mean, just to, you know, if you're not familiar with film, it typically takes a lot of light to work with digital film. And if you're doing super slow motion, like this film required, the specialist camera, which you see there on a stand towards the bottom middle, it's called a Phantom, and that actually requires 5 times the amount of lighting that even just any normal camera does. And so you can't see it in this shot, but there's so much lighting that has had to have been hidden in all corners of the space. You can see that lamp just by my head, how big just that one is. It's huge. And so it was quite an ordeal getting in all of this gear and kit. On this image, you can see the sort of tracks on the floor, on the carpet. I'll come back to the carpet a bit later that features in the paintings, but you can see it here. And, you know, it was a bit of a mad thing, because you've seen how many people are in the actual film. And we had kids as part of that. And so we were very conscious that it was going to be very hot in there with lights. So, and not to try and, you know, there's no professional actors here. You can't kind of just keep people for ages. So everyone was in the kitchen, you know, hanging out there. And while we set things up, and I've got my cousins and my brother and my sister and my wife there, who are just kind of being in there to help set up the shot so we can get the lighting right and get the shot and the camera movement as we wanted to get set. And then we'd shot that slow family side, as you saw, and then this was another part of the shoot. So the side of the film, which is the Black Hollywood side with this smoke and all of that, there's a part where the Spidey's jumping in the air, and then there's a part where it goes a close up to Spidey landing on the carpet. And it's kind of, you know, quite big, and you see his head turned towards the camera. So this was the shoot of that. So it was just kind of filming the landing part, if you like. And so you can see by then we'd shot the family part, and they were kind of free to get changed and go back to the kitchen and hang out. So we were shooting this part. It's a final shot of with the fam. Once we got the shot we wanted. First few shots we had to just completely redo them because people were smiling. Naturally, you know, I guess I was starting to learn a bit about directing in this. You know, it was just, I was so worried about the camera working right and me getting the jump right. We did this jump, and then I came down and realized everyone's got these big cheesy grins, which wasn't quite right for the picture. And so, you know, we sort of created some instructions. So one was the keeping a straight face, and then we had a very simple 1, 2, 3 count, whereby the camera would start close to them and then move back, because the whole shot is only like 3 seconds. It'd move back 3 seconds, and in counts 1 and 2, they're looking at the camera, and then at 3, the idea is that they look at Spidey and watch Spidey as he jumps, that sort of thing. And so we did that. I mean, we probably only filmed it about 6 or 7 times. And each time being a few seconds, partly because we had the kids there, and it just takes a lot of time to reset things up and all that. We were trying to get it done as quick as possible so that people wouldn't be uncomfortable with it. Okay, this is, let me cut the volume on this. The Spider-Man costume that you see in the film, and which is the same one in the sculpture, in the space. This video here is not the exact one in the film. It's one of 3 that I've made, one of which is in the film. So this is a slightly different process, and I'll explain why in a minute. But it's more or less this sort of process. So I, you know, start with a blank blue bodysuit canvas, and then I draw onto myself the shape of the Spider-Man costume. And then, it's a process of hand painting, as you can see in this video. All of the, well, everything, the mesh, the red. If you go back into the show and have a look at the sort of patterning, you know, I try to do it as uniform as possible, to try to make it look like it's done by machine, to look as professional as possible. You know, one of the ideas behind this work is having access to things that we're told we don't have access to. So, you know, you actually don't need a lot of money to do this. You know, the materials cost is probably around 100 quid. You know, the paints and the suit. It's actually just labor. I say just, it's about 4 months of labor. But, you know, the guys I learned to do it from are young lads on YouTube who do it in their spare time. So, you know, in a way, it's partly delving into this hobbyist space where people, you know, put vast amounts of time and labor into something to create something that in the end can look quite spectacular. You know, I wanted it to look like a movie replica. This one that you see in the film is a similar technique, but it's a written text instead of the mesh pattern. You can see this film on YouTube as well. You can see a bit of a close-up there. And so all of the red and all of where the black and blue goes, I've done it as text on this one. Oops, sorry. I don't have access to, okay. Sorry, I'm going to skip that. We nearly got to them. You know what the Spidey suit looks like. You can also, if you wanted to see the full video of that with the music and everything, it's on YouTube. It's for free. It's called Letter to Peter Parker. Or if you look up my name, you'll find it on there easy. So yeah, that was kind of plugging into the Spidey works, the film and the sculpture in there, and they'll loop back in a second as I talk about these paintings in a bit with certain overlaps that come with these new works. And so now we're into these the paintings, the new commissions. This is a photograph, or these photographs are from my studio before they came up to Hull. The paintings I've been developing over the last couple of years, they actually started with the material, really, which is the black glossy material. And some people mentioned to me they thought it was glass, but it's actually automotive paint, car paint on wood. So it's sprayed black and then lacquered in a way to get this high gloss finish. And the reason it was so important to me is because it's in reference to a material that's been in my life since I can remember. And it's from my dad's work. My dad, I was going to say used to make, even in retirement, he's still doing it, makes hearses and limousines for the funeral trade. And so this glossy material in our family was never a funereal thing. Actually, it was just work, or you know, something that was just around a lot. And you know how memory works when you think of things. There's certain smells, or there's certain textures, or you know, whatever it is that forms a part of who you are somehow. And this material was definitely for me that. And you know, because to make paintings for me, it doesn't really make sense for me to be making oil paints on canvas, for example. I've got no history or business with canvas. You know, I try to ignore Western canons of art history as much as possible. And so the material had to make sense for me. And all of these paintings, they come directly from photographs. So this here is, you know, the original photograph that the other one's taken from. You can sort of see it here. And this is the original of me and my gran in the house in Bolton. And then what I do with these photographs is I trace them on the iPad, and sort of draw them out digitally, plan them this way, and move around the carpet patternings, so they sit how I want them, the scale where they should be, almost as like drawing guides, if you like. And I'm also deciding what to exclude, usually most of the things in the background, and what to keep in. And then I use these drawing guides to project these images onto those boards. The boards I get sprayed by this company that sprays MDF. And so I get those pre-sprayed. I've tried doing those myself, and it's just impossible. It's a bit like spraying a car. You need kind of a dust-free, particular kind of environment to get such a perfect finish, if you like. And then underlaying these patterns that you see here, these two different carpet patterns, and these patterns are, they're from my grandmother's home in Bolton, which we don't have anymore, but where The Jump was filmed. And The Jump was filmed in 2015. My gran died in 2017, and then shortly after that, we had to sell the house. And this was very sad to lose that house. It's the house that my family have been in since the late 60s, when they emigrated from India. And everybody lived there at one point. I lived there till I was 5-6 years old, and eventually people would earn enough money to move out and get their own home. So we've all lived there at some point, and we're just all there every Christmas or every holiday, and so it's got a lot of history in this home. And as we were leaving it, and the carpets, the wallpaper, everything, nothing had changed. It'd just been like that for decades. And so that visual memory of it was very strong. And so, here you've got the carpet on the left, on the right is some of the wallpaper. Got the netting from the curtains, the green carpet here from the hallway in the dining room. That green carpet here and this carpet on the left are what you see in the paintings. And at the time, I'd asked my dad if I can keep the carpet, and he said no. And he was like, "You can't sell the house and take the carpet." And I was like, "They're just gonna rip it up." But it's all, as you might know, it's always an emotional time when someone close passes away, and so you're not necessarily thinking in practical terms. And so I understand that it might have felt a bit weird to rip the carpets out, but so I went around and photographed everything in quite a lot of detail, a lot of different close-up images of the walls, the ceiling, all the fabrics, all of everything, because I just felt like I couldn't quite let them go, and now they're kind of, I guess, seeping back, or seeping into my work, into my practice, and so it feels almost like a way to kind of keep some of this history alive in a present way, not in a nostalgic way, otherwise I just show the photographs. It's not the photographs, it's not that I want you to see them and think of a history or historical connection with them. I sort of want them to have presence today, if you like. And so the materials that I'm using are materials that we recognize from contemporary culture, whether it's from car paints or the acrylic paints, which are more, from gallery-based works. This is the same living room. That's a sofa that people were sat on for The Jump, but you can just sort of see, where the pillows are. Everything was reupholstered by my gran in her spare time. The curtains, everything. There was, and when you're growing up, like with your own family, you don't really see the richness of all of this. It's just embarrassing, or like it needs updating, or that sort of thing, you start to get a real sense of how incredible it is later, I think. Okay, so this is a bit of some bit of time-lapse bits from making of these paintings. So I'm just going to flick the one on the left. So typically what I would do is, after I projected the image onto the board, I would just sort of draw it with a Sharpie, so it's kind of relatively invisible, and then I'll kind of refine these images. And I'm sort of this is like a 3D fabric paint that I've used. So when I made the Spider-Man costume, all of the texturing that I've kind of hand painted on the Spider-Man costume, this is that same paint that I'm using onto these boards. So I create this outline, and you've got to dry it overnight before the acrylic painting of the carpet pattern happens. This middle screen, if you look at that, these faces from everyone are covered with gold leaf. So in order to kind of give them a bit more weight, if you like, I create the texture of the skin of each figure first, and each face is slightly different. They're supposed to not be quite exact with each other, and I sort of figure this out as I'm doing it. And then let me just move this. And then the one on the right there, you can see some of the gold leaf going on, which is a really delicate finicky process. I'd never done it before these paintings, but it's really tricky, and it creates a lot of dust. And yeah, it's a real pain. They're so thin, these sheets. And I was learning things that, like, if you use gold leaf, anything less than 22 carat, you have to put a glaze over it so it doesn't tarnish. So I had to make sure that the gold leaf was over 22 carat gold, so that so I didn't have to put a varnish over it, because I tried a varnish on another painting, and it slightly changes the color of it. It's really slight, but I really didn't like it. It sort of moved away from being gold into this kind of almost kitschy fake gold, if you like. And then if you see the one on the video on the left there, once that gold leaf is on, you sort of got to dust off the excess, and again, it kind of goes everywhere. And then sometimes you have to put in a second layer if you've missed things. And you can see in the reflection of that one on the left, actually one of the older paintings of the carpet pattern done in gold. And then if you see the right hand screen, what I do then is to go back over the gold with all the black lines. In a way, this is a second layer of these black lines. After that first layer, then I can feel free to sort of paint over them, but they'll still leave a relief underneath to give you a guide. And then I go back and do that sort of to finish that off. We're getting to the end. Thanks for your patience. And so if we look at this video on the left, this is a show just before Hull that I made and opened in India, in Mumbai, which is a bigger set of these. Oops, sorry about that. I need to. Let me try that again. I just realized, because of this control panel, can't. How do I move this? There you are. Okay. then I've got a hold of this. So this is a show, like I said, I just opened in Mumbai. I was out in Mumbai and we made these paintings out there, and there, you know, some more in this series. And these are slightly different. These are actual carpets made in Mirzapur in India, and so these paintings are slightly different to those. But the reason I'm showing you this is the lighting in this gallery. You know, I guess it's close to being your more standard gallery lighting, in the sense that you know, one thing that I loved actually is I'd only ever seen them in my studio in natural lighting and reflected in a particular way. So it's hard to see on these videos and images, but they're really lit really nice and beautifully, and all the colors really pop. And I guess that's because it's a painting show, you know, which is such a rarity for me. I'm usually showing film installation, and so, you know, I guess that's what felt like the way that it worked best for this exhibition. So the opportunity in Hull became to think of another way to show them, and when we're looking at it in the space, I didn't want it to just be, okay, let's just do it as a compromise, we just light them darker because we've got video and we have to show video. You know, I was interested in how they could exist together purposefully in there. So, you know, one thing that I loved, if you see the video on the right now, is that the reflections in the paintings could reflect other works, and because the jump references photography as well so much, it felt like a place that my existing work and newer work could exist together in a you know, in a way that could feel purposeful. You know, it's like the reflective surface is there for a reason. Sometimes you're implicated in it, sometimes you see yourself in it. Sometimes if you were to have it hung at home, it reflects your domestic environment, so it reflects your domestic space into this domestic space that I'm giving you. And in the gallery space, you know, I like the idea that other family pictures or whatever it might be, works in this instance, could be reflected in that. So last thing I want to kind of wrap up in, it was a little note about the faces. So, you know, the faces are rendered in this kind of geometrical lines, and where that comes from is the Transformers from the 80s, specifically, and you know, the geometry of these Transformers is very basic, and I guess this speaks partly of my generation. I was born in 1980. The Transformers were kind of born in 1985. And so this first movie had a massive impact on me, and also I tend to use Transformers as kind of metaphor for transformation in my work, cultural transformation, how we might transform our lives from one thing to another thing. So this is how I render my family as Transformers. You know, I'm kind of a bit like the jump is almost a metaphorical leap of immigration and the kind of audacity and the bravery of that. You know, the idea of thinking of people as Transformers feels like an extension of that for me. And then these are the latest works that, again, there's a number of Transformers works in my practice that go back to about 2013. And so here I've taken some of Transformers from my collection. I've spray painted them gold, so they look kind of almost heavy. And then I've overlaid my grandmother's carpet onto them. And so these ones are slightly different to my other works in the sense that typically my works are either one-offs, or the photographs sometimes have a short limit of editions of 5. These are editions of 100. I've just launched these on my website as a fundraiser for my next major project, which is going to be to make a feature film. And so, you know, that's, I can't even, that feels like a mountain to have to climb, one which I've never climbed before. And so part of, as well as applying for funding, I'm kind of finding different ways to fund these. But, you know, so these works are currently exist as photographic works, and some iterations might become paintings along the way. But I guess it's just to give you a sense of, from the beginning, the carpet appearing in the film of the jump, to being part of the paintings into another medium, to being then part of these photographs. If you're at the opening, you would have seen them on my jacket. You know, this motif of the carpet sort of finds itself in different modes, on different things, in different textures, and that's probably quite typical of my work. And is partly, it feels like a way to think about something. You know, if you're thinking about something and the kind of thing you're thinking about for a long time, you need to find different ways to think about it, because you're not getting an answer, or you're not quite not sure how you feel about it. So, you know, what if you think about it this way or that way, this angle, that angle? And so that's why I kind of make things different that way. Yeah, so I guess that's probably currently where I am. So I think I'll probably stop yapping there and bring Lauren back in.
Thank you so much, Hetain. That was such a rich insight and loads of real juicy behind the scenes into your practice, and seeing your grandma's home in Bolton be transformed into a film studio. That was really, yeah, that was a really nice little insight that you've gifted us tonight. So I think we'll move on to some questions, and maybe I'll kick off. Hetain, you work in so many different mediums, so performance, even at the show at Humber Street, there's the sculpture, there's the film, there's the new paintings. And it'd be really interesting, I think, to hear about how do you, I suppose, when you have an idea, how do you decide which medium to run with? Is it quite an intuitive thing? Is it, or like, how does that evolve within your practice?
Yeah, I mean, it varies really. Sometimes it starts with the medium. So, you know, I get an idea for something and it has to, and when I start thinking about it, it's the materiality which feels, for example, with the paintings, I knew that it had to be actual physical gloss on an object, for example, because that had to be real. It couldn't be mediated. It couldn't be just a video of it somehow. You needed to be able to touch it almost, or to be physical in a space. And then sometimes I don't know what medium it's going to be, the idea. And so I start by starting them off in a few different things. You know, so sometimes I start the idea as a performance, whilst at the same time developing it as a set of photographs, whilst at the same time developing it as something else. And then as that goes on, what happens sometimes is some just stop working, and you sort of think, oh, you know what, that's not working, and this one has to be a sculpture, and I'll carry that one, and that works. Sometimes they all work. And an idea becomes lots of different things, and they just end up doing different things. You know, like the Spider-Man costume, I first used it in a live performance for a theatre work. And then after that, I decided to use it for the photograph and for the jump. And, you know, because it felt like there was some stuff you can do in a film that you can't do in live performance, and some stuff you can't do in any of those medium that you can do in a photograph. You know, so that it feels like they give you a chance to do something very different.
And maybe the next question Amanda just popped in the chat is quite a nice follow-on from this. So she'd like to know if you can tell us what is it that draws you to the certain photographs you pick that you then transform into paintings?
Yeah, good question. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of choice. I've literally got thousands of photographs. You know, my family throughout the years have been, you know, just absolute crazy photo takers, you know, and it's in a way, if you imagine the origins of photography, after it being this magical witchcraft of sorts, it became a way to remember that something existed. In a sense, just painting did that before that, but arguably photography was truer at that time. It was held a level of truth, and so it was like being remembered. And so I feel like, in a way, that all the photographs that my family have taken, if you imagine a perspective of marginalized people, it becomes a way to flag your existence in the ground. And so we've got lots of photographs, and in a way, people don't look at photographs anymore because they're on people's phones. And so all of the photographs that I use for these paintings are from analog photography. And in a way, part of the purpose of putting them as paintings in a contemporary medium is, again, to re-anchor, re-put in the ground that we existed, in a medium that we can recognize as being more current. And then, so, in a sense, even though there's just two paintings in the show, in my mind, there's hundreds of paintings. If I had the resource and time, I'd make them all. I'm trying to make a bunch more. And so I'm trying not to be too, it's about this painting or about that painting. In a way, I want there to be enough that each particular one becomes less loaded, or in a sense. But having said that, I still do have aesthetic, and I guess I do look at how things are composed, and all of that. So I will probably pick, as I'm building these initial set, a mix of different generations, of different genders, of different family dynamics, and try to represent or show some of the mix of the varying different dynamics. So as across the body of the painting, if you saw more, you'll see the similar figures pop up at different ages, or talking to different people, or that sort of thing. So I guess at the start, it's like picking some of my favorites maybe and starting with that. Or sometimes I want to play with, like the two paintings in the show. Part of the consideration is I wanted to get one painting that felt quite full, where there's a lot of color loaded onto it, and then in terms of composition, wanting to find something which felt more minimal, where me and my gran, we're just kind of quite central in the middle, and so it kind of leaves a lot of space for the reflective part of the painting.
Thank you. When you were speaking there and you mentioned like revisiting old memories in new mediums like photography and painting, it reminded me of what you said and within like your main presentation that really struck me. You said something like, you have no history of canvas, so it's like it feels like there's this running like thread within your practice, which is like almost like I would say like emerging technologies, but like film and stuff isn't emerging anymore, but maybe it's like technologies and things which like spoke to you at a certain time or something like that. It just feels like there's something within like the mediums there.
Yeah, no, you're right. Actually, it's almost like the quicksand disappearing. You're sort of grabbing on to the newer sand.
Yeah,
it's like
and then that's the thing of technology, it quickly becomes old sand.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to find new ways to do things, right?
Yeah. No, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions that you either want to put in the chat or you want to unmic and ask Hetain before we finish up for the evening? No, I think okay. So that I'll conclude. I could carry on asking loads of questions, but I'm sure everyone's hungry for some tea or something like that. So I won't do that. I just want to thank everyone, first of all, for coming, and especially for Hetain. And thank you for coming and giving us such a rich insight and into your practice and given us lots of behind the scenes, which we wouldn't naturally see. And also it gives people an expanded view of the exhibition, which there's still lots of time to come and see. So the exhibition's still on for until the 25th of June. So there's still loads of time to come down to Humber Street Gallery and see it. Just before we all leave, I want to just also flag that we've got a few more bits of public programme coming up that I'd encourage you all to join if you can. So next week on Wednesday, the 10th of May, we've got an evening hosted by the wonderful Critical Fish, who are an organisation based in Hull who encourage accessible writing and criticism surrounding arts practice. So within that, we'll be looking at both Heitain's exhibition, but also our exhibition in Space 2, Winter Breaks Fest by Luke Beach. And then we've also got coming up in June, on the 8th of June, one of our Thursday lates by local artist instigator Michael Barnes-Winters, Salam. That's going to be happening at the gallery from 7 till 9 p.m. on the 8th of June. And you can find information and booking for all these events on our website, which I'm going to put in the chat before we end the event. But I would encourage you all to, if you haven't, come and see the exhibition. And if you can make it to some more of the public programme, we'd love to see you there. So yeah, thank you, Hetain, and thanks everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming along. Appreciate it. Take care.